A few years back, I passed through a town called Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. And of course, I loved the name, even after I found out it was inspired by a 50s radio show. Because telling the truth is a bedrock virtue, and there should be consequences when people willfully lie. But we're living in a time when the truth is under attack. Sometimes it's a full frontal assault from disinformation. Other times it's treating the truth as a matter of opinion, using facts with feelings. The most sickening twist is that there can be more consequences for telling the truth than lying, especially in politics. After all, remember, Liz Cheney got knocked out of Republican leadership for righteously condemning Trump's attempted coup, replaced by Elise Stefanik, who compliantly backed the big lie. That's careerism and a personality cult, masquerading as a political party. But consequences can change the calculus, and that's why Steve Bannon's indictment could be a turning point. An issue is the attempt to stonewall the January 6th Commission, with Trump desperately trying to block the release of 700 pages of White House documents around the attack. Now a second memo on how to overturn the election from Trump lawyers surfacing? It's clear that there's plenty to hide. Trump's strategy, though, has always been to deny and delay, so he's ordered his flunkies to ignore congressional subpoenas. But presidents are not kings, as Judge Chanya Chutkan wrote, and executive privilege exists for the benefit of the republic, not any individual. Accountability is essential because without consequences, we will continue to define deviancy down, leading to even more division and dysfunction in our democracy. Guaranteed. Consider this. Today's Republican Party doesn't seem to care if you try to overturn an election or threaten to kill a colleague. But here's what they do consider a firing offense: working with Democrats. Because there was no evident Republican outrage when Republican Congressman Paul Gosar released that bizarre anime video where he appeared to kill Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and attack President Biden. But when 13 Republicans had the temerity to vote for a bipartisan infrastructure bill that would benefit their constituents, they were called traitors and communists. Now, Gosar's in a safe seat, so it's unlikely he'll face electoral consequences. But those 13 Republicans will face right-wing primary challenges or be targeted for redistricting. If defending democracy doesn't seem like a big deal to you, look at the life or death consequences of lying about COVID. Because newly released emails and testimony from Trump CDC officials show that they were pressured to downplay the pandemic in its earliest days out of White House fears that the truth would make Trump look bad. The Trump White House tried to interfere in the release of accurate COVID data, refusing CDC requests to hold briefings about mask guidance and pediatric COVID cases, leading officials to feel muzzled. Dr. Deborah Birx testified that Trump aide Scott Atlas pushed for and got less testing of asymptomatic people, which she believes was the primary reason for the early community spread. It adds more detail to what Birx told CNN back in March.
There were about 100,000 deaths that came from that original surge. All of the rest of them, in my mind, could have been mitigated or decreased substantially.
All of the rest. America is now past 750,000 lives lost to COVID. That's the consequence of not confronting the truth sooner. And all this has a downstream effect on our culture, the continued politicization of this deadliest pandemic in our history. I don't know what Vince Lombardi would have done about Green Bay QB Aaron Rodgers lying to his teammates about being vaccinated, but I'd guess there would have been some consequences. But when Rodgers did get caught, he blamed the woke mob, quoted Martin Luther King, and got fined a whopping $14,650. That's a lot of money to most Americans, but not for a guy who makes over $30 million a year. And it looks worse in context. Dallas Cowboys wide receiver CeeDee Lamb got fined more money by the NFL for having his jersey untucked twice. That's a sign of some serious misplaced priorities, but it's also a reflection of our society right now. We too often fixate on small things, culture war infractions, and ignore the big stuff, like lying and putting your fellow citizens at risk. And that includes COVID and January 6th. If we want more truth, we're going to need to insist on more consequences. And that's your reality check.